What does it mean to be an artist? To really dedicate your life to your craft. We know what the end result was, but what about the life that led to these films? I've read a lot of books about Stanley Kubrick, and I've been fascinated with his films, but perhaps the answer to his genius wasn't in the films themselves, but in the way that he lived his life. The two best resources I've ever found for discovering who this man was, how he worked, the research he did, how he organised his life, was number one, the Movie Geeks United podcast, which is a series of interviews with people who have worked closely with Stanley over his career, and number two, Emilio's book, called Stanley Kubrick and Me, 30 Years at His Side. Emilio was one of Stanley Kubrick's personal assistants. Now, newspapers and speculation has labelled this man as a recluse, a taskmaster, an obsessive genius in hiding. But really, these sources paint a different picture of a man dedicated to his work and his family.
It's the last page, isn't it? Yeah. It's my great fortune that Stanley's love and care for his family had the same intensity that his films had. You're a very lucky woman.
I did feel extremely lucky. And also our lives together were really interesting and fun.
I guess I've been looking for clues, nuggets of information that would help me improve my work in the direction of some sort of artistic endeavour. Now, in his deep artistic drive to create private films for public audiences, he adopted a work ethic that not many could match.
You have no other project?
No, I wish I did. Don't want to wait so long because it's too long. I wouldn't like to, if I had a story right now, I wouldn't particularly want to start immediately because it does start to feel like a lot of work. You know, you work very long hours for a very long time, and you really don't do anything else. When you're filming, you know, you get up at, 5 o'clock. If you want to not be tired, you've got to go to bed around 10. If you fall behind in the editing, you get up later, but you wind up working a very long day. We were working until 6 in the morning every day. Working backwards. It takes about a year, it takes about 6 months to shoot it. If it's a complicated picture with research, it takes about a year to carefully prepare. So that's 2.5 years. So now the question is, how long does it take you to find a story? You know what I mean? That's the problem. This one took about 2 years. That's the whole thing. If I could find a story now, you know, I could have a film out, say, in, 3 years easily.
Phoning collaborators in the middle of the night, sleeping very few hours, constantly reading in search of that new story that would grab him, and hiring assistants that were prepared to go over and above. He was quoted as saying, "It's a waste of time to stop work at 6. There's still half a day to make use of."
And it lasted idyllically for 3 nights until on the third night, when the fax machine went off at 1 a.m., then 4 a.m., then again at 6:30 a.m., my wife picked up Stanley, unplugged him from the wall, moved him into the living room, and plugged him back into the wall down there. And I never told Stanley that my wife had sent him out of our boudoir. I never told him that.
One of the things that became clear through these podcasts and through this book is that he demanded twice as much of himself. And even though people were exhausted and tired, his perspective was, you either care or you don't. But for Stanley, work and family were inseparable. He had his family shoot documentary footage on his set, visiting the set, and he had his work meetings at home, editing suite at home, projection rooms at his house. His house turned into this mini London studio, close enough to London so that stars could visit, but far enough away to keep that privacy he required. Now, regardless of location, Stanley had access to anybody. Now, his work ethic was much more like an essayist. He studied and read everything on a topic that others had said before, and then expressed himself in this new way. Emilio was often required to bring as many as 7 films for Stanley to watch over a weekend. And the more you learn about Stanley, the more you realise that he had an incredible thirst for knowledge and a broadness of curiosity that made even the most trivial things fascinating to him. collecting boxes and boxes of research and material per film. His processes lasted years, and in the later years of his careers, these research periods lasted even longer. But his childlike enthusiasm for these things extended into the technical possibilities and innovation of cinema, both in terms of form for a film and equipment for a film.
Since I have always found it very easy to do the visual side of movies, I never even worry. The problem with audiences is the story. Movies are not disappointing because they're disappointing visually. They're disappointing because they're just boring, and there's nothing about them that really moves you or gets to your imagination. I would say your problem more is where do good stories come from? Is there ever going to be a way to combine the structure of the silent movie with the quick presentation of an ideal of the TV commercial? Maybe a poet has to do it, because I don't know. A novelist will never do it. A playwright will never do it. And if you're not a writer, you probably never do it. So somewhere, somebody has to be able to take the wonderful economical, structural possibilities of a silent movie with the tremendous power that a good TV commercial can generate on a topic in 30 seconds. I still think this would be the most exciting thing that happened since whoever it was cut the two first films together and realized you could have editing. You really needed sort of like an editing of the mind, which hasn't happened. Just tell a story in a different way.
What was it actually like on set, watching him direct? What was he looking for? The most common answer to this is he didn't know. He only knew what he didn't want.
Directing a movie, if you try to do it properly, is not always fun, because you are in conflict with people, even on a subtle level. I mean, I saw Woody Allen interviewed. He found that working with other actors as a director, he said, no matter how calm it all is and no matter how it's accepted, he said you can always see in their eyes the resentment of being told anything. And of course that's always true. I find the writing of the thing and the editing of the thing immensely enjoyable. The shooting of the thing is sometimes enjoyable.
You know, they just keep seeing one fashion of unreal after the other that passes as real. And you go mad with realism, and then you come up against someone like Stanley who says, yeah, it's real, but it's not interesting.
The process of creating a scene was always a work in progress, and it was something that he didn't mind taking the time to find. Now, these long productions contributed to his reputation as an obsessive perfectionist, which he was, but purely with the aim of making the best film possible and not to serve his ego.
But I find that the structure, you know, the events, if they're right, you know, if the moments are right, it usually is fairly simple to write the scene. There are times in various films where there hasn't even been time to write the scene. It's never been solved until, say, 2 days before you do it. You just couldn't think. Once you know what's supposed to happen, really sort of write the scene on the actors, as it were, in the rehearsal. I mean, that part of the scene, the dialogue, is not the most difficult. It isn't in this type of story. It is obviously in a film where someone's going to sit and talk for 30 minutes in one place, you know, like a play. You know, when the attitude of the people is correct and the purpose of the scene is correct and the action of the scene is interesting, then the rest of it is pretty simple. If you talk
and then he
say
blows
this
up.
right, I'd rather say it now.
Okay.
Right? Honestly, don't think the lines are going to make an awful lot of difference if you get the right attitude. I think you're worrying about the wrong thing.
Now, to be an artist is to love and be passionate towards your work. This can manifest in obsessive behavior and single-mindedness, but for those who share the ambition and drive to create great work will know that it takes an incredible amount of self-belief and structured habits to fully realize one's potential. I guess every time I see a picture of Stanley Kubrick, I'm reminded of a man who lived his life with absolute purpose, inner drive, and as a result produced one of the best bodies of work in cinema.
This is Stanley Kubrick. I think that despite the unhappy financial upheaval that it has caused in the movie industry, it has also provided a very invigorating and stimulating challenge, which has made it necessary for films to be made with more sincerity and more daring. If Hollywood lacks the color and excitement of its early days. I think, on the other hand, it provides the most exciting and stimulating atmosphere of opportunity and possibilities for young people today.